Welcome back as we continue graphing functions. We have part B, which is the graph of g of x, and it's shown below. It does represent a function, so I'll say yes here. And we need to find its domain and range, and then we need to find g of 3. We also want to find out if there are any values for which g of x equals 0. It might be beneficial to just go to Desmos and graph y equals 0 and x equals 0 and see what you get. Because I think that will help you understand when I say y equals 0, it's talking about a horizontal line along the x-axis. This might not be very intuitive, but this is how graphing works. So when I'm at y equals 0, it's how far up or down the graph I am. And at y equals 0, I'm sitting on the x-axis. So it's saying what values of x give g of x equal to 0. This is g of x equals 0. That's the same as saying y equals 0, only it means it has more power. A function notation gives you substitution power, whereas y equals 0 is just a line. So there's 1, 2, 3 intersections with the graph at y equals 0. So let's go ahead and list those. X equals -2, x equals 2, and x equals 4. Now let's look at our domain. If we want to find the domain, we want to find all the x values for which a graph exists. Since we have endpoints at -3 and at 5, and they are closed dots, we will have brackets at -3 and at 5 along the x-axis. The entire interval from -3 to 5 is the domain. So our domain will be the interval, open bracket, -3, comma, 5, close bracket. Now we need to figure out how high and how low the function goes. -3, -1, we are at the lowest point, because if we trace that over to the y-axis, we're at -1. And then the highest point that we have is at 2. And we'll go ahead and assume that that includes 2. I would be fairly flexible in how I would grade something like that. So if you said a parenthesis at the top, I would accept that. It's a little bit ambiguous at this point. And so we would have -1 to 2. Open bracket, -1, comma, 2, closed bracket. And then our last question is find g of 3. That's saying when x equals 3, find what y equals. We don't know, so we need to find it. So I'm going to go over to my graph, and I'm going to graph a line, a vertical line at x equals 3. When I do that, there's only one point of intersection with g of x, and that is at -1 in the y direction. So my y value is -1. That means my input is 3 and my output is -1. This is my coordinate point where that is true. So g of 3 equals -1.